Hey guys, your captain is back.
Hey,
A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about the worst Simpsons Treehouse of Horror segments. The Treehouse of Horror episodes are episodes that are divided in three stories, all themed around horror, science fiction, or fantasy. And since the stories in each editions are almost always completely disconnected from each other, this can make the quality of these episodes really uneven. Whether we get 3 amazing segments like in Treehouse 4, 3 bad segments like in Treehouse 22, or 2 good segments and 1 mid one like in Treehouse 19. I already talked about the worst segments, but I think it's worth mentioning that whether we're talking early seasons or modern seasons, there are way more good segments than bad segments, so it wouldn't be fair if I just talked about the negative side of things without talking about my 10 favorite segments of all time as well. And that's precisely what we're going to do today. Let's go! Number 10. I've grown a costume on your face. I've grown a costume on your face is a great start to this video, showcasing how creative the Treehouse of Horror segments can be, even with a seemingly simple premise. This segment is a parody of The Masks, a Twilight Zone episode where 4 people go to a party where they wear masks that represent the bad moral aspects of their personalities, and after they remove them at midnight, their faces change into the shape of those masks.
and that's also the last segment to parody a Twilight Zone episode ever.
This segment adopts a more humorous approach to the topic. On Halloween night, the Simpsons decide to go to Mayor Quimby's office because he's holding a contest on who has the best Halloween costume of Springfield. A witch wins the contest with flying colors, but then when the mayor asks who she is, she reveals she's actually a witch and that she isn't dressed up. Since this isn't a costume, Mayor Quimby disqualifies her, but she then gets mad because she lost her reward. So she casts a spell on the city to turn all the citizens into what their costumes represent. For example, Marge turns into a skeleton and Homer turns into a headless zombie. And so, we see how the citizens try to adapt to their new forms in the city, until Lisa has the idea to use Maggie's new witch powers to lift the spell. This doesn't go as well as planned, as she turns all the citizens into pacifiers, ending the segment.
Pinkie Pie, your store rent. Oh, sorry, wrong show.
So putting this segment in this list might be surprising, because it has a very straightforward plot and a simple premise, like several segments that ended in my top 10 worst Treehouse segments of all time video. The key difference is simple. This segment didn't try to fill itself with useless stuff, and it's short enough, clocking in at about 5 minutes 30 if you exclude the outro dialogue. It's understood what made it work in the first place, the sheer creativity of its transformations. They're all really creative and work with each character's personalities. Abraham got turned into a gorilla because he's old and weaker than in his youth, and he will therefore be happy to retrieve the physical abilities that he used to have. Groundskeeper Willie turns into a box spray can because he worked as a groundskeeper in the first place. Ned turns into a flower because he's a nice guy. Bart turns into a werewolf because he's rebellious. Lisa turns into Einstein because she's the smart kid of the family. And even the other transformations are used in really creative way too, with some really funny gags. Like Marge turning into a skeleton that leads to Snowball 2 scratching her ribs, or Homer turning into a headless zombie-like creature, I guess, which leads to him being unable to actually enjoy his Duff beer. There's also Mayor Quimby turning into an anthropomorphic burger that leads to dogs trying to eat him. And Mole Man's joke is especially funny. He got turned into a mole even though he wasn't wearing anything. And this costume just represented an arrow in the head, leading to him slowly dying. Although he reappears as a pacifier at the end. But my favorite one is Kerry Nelson. At the start of the segment, this is what Bart and Nelson say.
Et Nelson, arrête ton laveur.
Arrête ton laveur, un cow-boy masqué!
And later in the segment,
Je suis un cow-boy pas un raton laveur!
I don't need to continue on with the examples. The writers really thought out the whole thing well to find the most appropriate transformations for each character, depending on their personalities and running gags, but also the most creative ways of exploiting each character's transformations. This leads to segments that never runs out of surprising and creative ideas or even funny jokes. Even the ending with the pacifiers is kinda out of touch with the rest of the segments, but the execution of this part makes it pretty funny too. Even a short length isn't necessarily a problem, because while you may want more when it's over, the simple premise and straightforward execution makes it so the story didn't need to be longer. Overall, I've Grown a Costume on Your Face is a segment that could have been easily lazy, but it instead managed to be a really funny and creative segment that's packed with surprising and clever ideas and jokes despite its short length, and that I always enjoy watching regularly. Number 9. Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores. It's worth saying this, Treehouse of Horror 6 is my favorite Treehouse installment, and spoiler alert, all of its segments will be in this top 10 list. Just like the previous segments, Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores also manages to take a simple albeit wacky concept that could have raised many eyebrows and to make it work with great jokes and creative ideas. This time, Homer is very excited to eat at the new Lord Yad's donut, hoping it will be as big as its billboard. He's very frustrated when he sees the donut is as small as any old normal donut. So he decides to take the billboard's donuts instead.
Even though I don't see why it would be useful because it's fake.
Right after that, the mascot gets struck by lightning and comes to life. It then roars loudly to bring the other mascots to life. They start destroying the city as the Lord Gad's mascot wants to get its donuts back. But then, Lisa has an idea. She gets Paul Anka to sing a song to tell the people of Springfield to not look at the mascots. When everyone follows this advice, the mascots die one after the other.
It's scary how this more light segment has a better satire than the modern segment that is actually meant to be a huge satire.
The good aspects of this segment are actually really similar to I've Grown a Costume on Your Face's qualities, so I won't take too long for this segment. But really, who would have suggested such a segment with a weird premise? Not a lot of people, but it works. First, it's a cool way to satirize those weird, semi-humorous sci-fi plots that could turn the most ridiculous thing into a monster. However, instead of imagining a wacky monster and make it destroy the city in a lazy story, the writers actually managed to give us really funny and creative jokes with all the mascots, like the cowboy who squishes people with his bottle, the Kent Brockman mascot who kills the real Kent Brockman, the devil mascot that Bart uses to destroy the school, and my favorite joke, this one.
Ils sont pas si coriaces que ça.
Chef, c'était pas un monstre, ouais, c'était le capitaine de l'équipe de basketball.
Ouais, bon, il est en train d'en devenir un, voilà.
Then, the metaphor about commercials and TV is also funny, because the way they stop the monsters is to not watch them. And this mirrors real-world commercial and TV programs very well, because if a TV program isn't watched by enough people, it will eventually have to end prematurely. And the song that Lisa and Paul Anka sing to tell the people of Springfield to avoid watching the mascots is pretty catchy too. Overall, Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores is a simple but really funny segment that manages to be creative and engaging all throughout with various ideas for good jokes within each mascot and a funny metaphor with commercials as well. Number 8. The Thing and I from the Treehouse of Horror 7. The Thing and I is one of the many segments that master a combination of comedy, horror, and creativity perfectly for an incredible result. This segment is a parody of Basket Case, a movie which turns the concept of conjoined twins on its head with a horrific twist. The Thing and I follows a similar plot, but with the Simpsons source. In this segment, Bart and Lisa are suddenly awakened at night by a weird noise coming from the attic. When they tell their parents about it, Marge looks uncomfortable about the whole thing, and Homer brings fish heads to the attic to do something off screen that Bart and Lisa don't see. When they're home alone, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie decide to go into the attic during the day to see what is that secret that Homer and Marge are so reluctant to reveal to their children. After climbing, they see a mysterious shadowy figure freeing itself from chains and running around the attic before walking threateningly towards them. Later in the day, as Marge calls Dr. Hibbert, Bart busts her talking about the secret, finally forcing Dr. Hibbert, who just came in the house, to tell the story she was hiding from them until then. Bart actually had a conjoined twin brother who was born with him, named Hugo. This conjoined twin was apparently an incarnation of the devil and was very violent, forcing Hibbert to separate them. So Homer and Marge chained Hugo into the attic, and to this day, they only feed him once a week with fish heads. All the family, sans Bart, goes out of the house to look for him. Bart tries to look for Hugo in the house too, but the latter ends up finding him and tying him up on the table in the attic. He wants to tie himself back with Bart. However, Dr. Hibbert manages to trap him and to save Bart. But then he notices that Hugo's scar is on his left side and that he already knows that devilish conjoined twins always have their scar on the right side. This means that all this time, Bart was the devilish twin, not Hugo. The segment ends with Hugo replacing Bart as the family is seemingly eating Thanksgiving dinner, and Bart has been banished into the attic, only eating fish heads once a week like Hugo used to do. This segment manages to combine all the ingredients for a perfect Treehouse of Horror story. First, it's really funny. There are a lot of good jokes, like the part where Homer and Marge fail to hide their secret about Hugo.
Assez de questions. Je me tue au boulot pour nourrir 4 gamins et tout ce que vous... Quoi?
3? Nous avons 3 enfants, merde.
Then, it also works on the fear factor, especially on the atmosphere. Many scenes feel surprisingly tense, like the scene where Bart, Lisa, and Maggie see Hugo for the first time, or the part where Hugo ties Bart up to reunite with him. This part is legitimately chilling, and Hugo's crazy aspect makes it feel even more tense, especially with the high stakes of the whole situation. I also love the twist they gave us at the end, because it's really funny, with more jokes about Hugo readapting to living with the Simpsons, but the whole cruelty of that outcome with Bart living in the attic forever, cut from anything he used to love most of the time, already feels really chilling too. The build-up is also done really perfectly, starting with the strange noises the kids hear at night, before slowly but surely uncovering Hugo's identity, his plan, and the secret of the family, then building up to the whole climax with his plan to stitch himself back with Bart again. And Dr. Hibbert is a really funny character in this segment too. He works really well with the whole plot and the chilling atmosphere, always being relaxed and cracking jokes even in a terrifying situation like this. His personality contrasts perfectly with the tension of the whole ordeal, which allows for funny jokes and manages to lighten the mood when he comes back to the Simpsons house just after the climax.
Though Springfield could really benefit from having other doctors.
Overall, The Thing and I is a perfect mix. A great premise with a perfect choice for movie to parody, a cool one-off character, a lot of funny jokes, a downright chilling atmosphere, a great build-up, and an ending that's both funny yet scary due to its cruel nature. Let's go to the next segment. Number 7, Nightmare Cafeteria from the Treehouse of Horror 5. Nightmare Cafeteria is often seen as one of the scariest Treehouse of Horror segments ever made. And yeah, despite not having as many jokes as other segments, it fully delivers on the fear factor. If I made a list that only considers the horror aspect of each segment, it would easily crack the top 3, and it could maybe even be number 1. In this segment, the detention room is so overcrowded that Skinner is forced to send children to the cafeteria instead. Plus, due to budget cuts, the school is forced to serve low-quality meat. When Skinner tries to find a solution to these problems, Jimbo spills food on himself, leading the principal to try how it tastes, finding it delicious. And see the next part for yourself.
C'est nouveau, ce goût, c'est jeune, c'est audacieux. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans cette bouffe, Seymour?
Il faudrait peut-être que je vous mette au courant. Vous vous souvenez, un jour, j'avais dit que je ferais quelque chose de Jimbo Jones.
Vous voulez dire que vous avez tué Jimbo, que vous l'avez dépecé et que vous nous le servez au déjeuner?
Yes. They start cooking the children they send to detention one by one. As the children get burgers from the lunch lady, they start to notice that Jimbo is missing. And then Utel asks for seconds, then thirds, which pisses Skinner off, until he realizes that from then he must have become fat, and therefore more tender, leading to him being the next victim of this cannibalistic detention trap. Right after, the lunch lady serves German food that she named Utel Blatel for Oktoberfest. Lisa grows more and more suspicious. After Skinner starts to act weirder and weirder, the whole school finally understands what's going on. After seeing another freaked out kid get detention due to dropping a pencil on the ground, Bart, Lisa, and Milhouse decides to run away from the school. Then, the scariest scene of this segment, and perhaps of any Treehouse of Horror episode, starts. After they uncover the secret of the school, seeing Skinner treat the children like animals he'd exploit for meat, the three kids get busted by this lunch lady, covered in blood, who is trying to kill them with a kitchen utensil. Even when groundskeeper Weed tries to save them, Skinner kills him before he can do anything. As the other teachers join them, they chase the kids, trapping them near a giant blender. And usually, you'd expect a miracle rescue to save the kids. But no, they fall in the blender, and the story ends with Bart screaming, revealing the whole story was just his nightmare, leading to the final gag of Treehouse of Horror 5. So this story may not have a lot of humor compared to the 3 previous ones, but it fully makes up in terms of horror, and in that department, the lack of humor actually becomes a boon for the segment, because that allows it to deliver fully on the fear factor without any gags to lighten the mood like you'd usually expect in a Treehouse of Horror episode. And that scary atmosphere is executed perfectly. Just like The Thing and I, this segment builds up its fear factor so well. It starts with the students doubting what's happening, which leads to a cautious but still laid-back tone. Then, slowly but surely, it's a descent into horror as the atmosphere gets more and more tense and the fear of being the next victim reigns in the school. Once again, the last part becomes legitimately chilling, with a panic-like atmosphere and bloodthirsty teachers at every corner at the school, increasing the fear factor with that no-exit feeling. It builds up from a cautious atmosphere to high tension to true panic perfectly. However, it manages to stay credible by not throwing in blood, gore, or jump scares every 2 seconds.
Just like a certain type of creepypasta.
Exactly. But what I mean is, I appreciate that they went for a full-blown horrific atmosphere without going overboard with jump scares, gore, or body horror. That could have easily ruined the atmosphere. Instead, the truly scary moments, in visual terms and terms of atmosphere, are used sparingly, but allow for a chilling build-up where you constantly know something's wrong no matter where you go, with a climax that becomes genuinely chilling. Overall, Nightmare Cafeteria is a perfect segment, not for its humor like the 3 previous segments, but thanks to a legitimately scary, chilling, and tense atmosphere that continuously builds up throughout the segments. Number 6. Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace. After a simple but really creative and funny first segment, Treehouse of Horror 6 continues to deliver with one of the best parodies this show has ever written. If Geriatric Park or In the Navy are perfect examples of how to fail a parody, Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace is a perfect example to make a pretty funny, creative, and fresh parody that both gives you the spirit of the original movie and the Simpsons source. As you probably guessed, this segment is a parody of the famous horror movie Nightmare on Elm Street, with groundskeeper Willie taking the role of Freddy Krueger. We start with Bart Simpson playing Frisbee with Santa's little helper, when suddenly, groundskeeper Willie comes. He threatens Bart before attacking him with his rake. Bart then wakes up, finding out that it was all a dream. But then, he sees the traces of blood from the rake on his torso, and starts to get freaked out, leading to this joke that I really love.
Bart, c'est toi?
Ouais.
Sors la poubelle.
The following afternoon, he talks about what happened to him in school. Then, Lisa says that she also had a similar nightmare, and her hair got cut from it.
Yeah, it's her hair.
Other students start to talk about it, so Skinner ends up overhearing it. He tries to reassure the students by saying nothing weird happened to Wade, but this instead makes them even more suspicious. During the day, Martin Price, who finished his classwork early, can sleep in class. He has a dream where Wade strangles him with his tongue. But this time, out of the dream, he ends up dying from the strangulation. This is the last straw for Bart and Lisa, so during the evening, Homer and Marge are forced to finally tell the truth to their children. During the winter, the parents all had a meeting at the school. Homer felt so chilly that he decided to turn on the heat, even though groundskeeper Willie was playing in the heater room and advising people to avoid doing this. This resulted in a fire that burned Willie alive. When he called for help, the parents wanted to end their meeting first, so he didn't survive. He then swore, before dying and becoming a pile of ashes, that he'd kill all of their children where their parents can't protect them, in their dreams. Bart and Lisa try to stay awake to avoid being chased, but it becomes obvious that they won't be able to not fall asleep. So Bart decides to start sleeping and to fight with Willie, so that Lisa could wake him up if he's close to dying. After a confrontation where Bart and Lisa almost die, Maggie manages to beat Willie thanks to her pacifier. Then they wake up. We end the segment with Willie trying to scare the children one last time until he realizes that he left his gun on the seat on the bus he came from. This time, what makes this segment great is that it's simply the perfect way to write a parody of a horror movie. Everything that you need is here. First, there is the horror factor. The segment plays pretty well on how sleeping can end up being the death of you, even though sleeping is necessary for your body, and that you can't resist falling asleep forever, building up a fear of that oncoming fate that you'd fail to escape as it gets closer and closer. Groundskeeper Willie, with his grumpy personality, is a good character to parody Freddy Krueger.
No, you don't get to make a joke about Freddy Fazbear.
Even the way they parody how Freddy Krueger became the cold-hearted murderer we know after being assassinated is so funny thanks to its absurdity, with Wade trying to ask for help as he burns life, only for Skinner to say that he's interrupting the meeting as Wade's just dying. Then, the creativity of the dreams works really well too, from Bart's initial plan to kill Wade to Martin Price's dream. And once again, everything builds up perfectly, starting with the initial dream that's thought to scare Bart, before we see other children saying they dreamed of Willie as well, until one of them dies from those dreams. Which is the last straw as the parents are forced to tell the truth, before Bart and Lisa have to fight Willie to end this constant nightmare. Every part builds up perfectly and seamlessly to the other. Really, this segment is perfect. It's understood how to mix the psychological horror of the original movie's concept with the Simpsons source and a lot of jokes that end well. Let's go to the next one. Number 5. The Shinning from Treehouse of Horror 5. The Shinning is easily the most popular Treehouse of Horror segment ever made. When I see top lists of the best Treehouse of Horror segments, it almost always gets the number 1 spot.
But Ribam only put it at number 5 because he's a robber.
As you probably guessed, this segment is a parody of the movie Shining from Stanley Kubrick. Like in the movie, the family must guard the hotel for the winter. Mr. Burns, who owns this hotel, secretly took away all of the beer and cut the cables of the TV to make sure they wouldn't slack off. In parallel, Bart, because the parody of Danny in the movie reveals to groundskeeper Wade that he has the Shining, a mind-reading ability which is called the Shinning in this segment for a copyright joke. But then, things escalate from there. Homer finally finds out that the TV isn't working and that there is no beer in the room. He quickly starts to show sign of madness as he vows to kill his family, even though he seems to manage to snap out of it at first. But then, a ghostly version of Moe tells him that if he wants a beer, he'll have to kill his family, putting him in a murderous rage again. Marge finds him later in the corridor, in a complete madness, so she puts him in the food reserve to occupy him for long enough time. However, Moe tells him to go back to his task of killing his family. He finds them again and starts chasing them. Bart uses his mind-reading ability, which also fails because Homer manages to kill groundskeeper Willie before he can do anything.
Yeah, it's a running gag in Treehouse of Horror 5.
We then get a more horrific climax again in the tundra near the hotel, as Homer gets closer and closer to killing his family, until Lisa saves the situation by using Willie's portable TV. The segment ends with the whole family being frozen as they continue to watch TV without being able to change the channel. It's honestly hard for me to say anything about this segment that hasn't already been said before, but it's still a really fucking great segment. In a way, just like Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace is the perfect antithesis I do of the lazy parody segments like When Harry Met Slimy or Geriatric Park, as it's the perfect way to make a parody of a horror movie in The Simpsons, and in a way, the best example to follow in that regard. It keeps the horror factor with several parts that honestly get really tense, like the part where Marge encounters her husband turned crazy for the first time since he's gone mad, or the climax outside of the hotel with the family desperately running away from a crazy Homer who's getting closer and closer as he rushes to murder them. The humor is also great, like with that scene where Homer has to break 3 doors in the hotel before finally finding the room where his family is, mirroring the famous "Here's Johnny" quote from Stanley Kubrick's Shining. Moe trying to convince Homer that he's happier as a ghost, so he accepts to kill his family.
T'as pas l'air heureux.
Si je suis heureux, je suis très heureux. La 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 la. T'as vu? Zigouille ta famille et je te file une bière.
And of course, that iconic part where Homer starts to go act like an animal in the middle of the segment, with the amazing acting on top of it. And despite having to be compressed in 7 minutes, this segment is packed with a lot of things and manages to pay homage to a lot of scenes from the original movie/book. From the introduction that directly mirrors the one from the movie, the "No TV and no beer makes Homer go crazy" inscription written everywhere on the wall, the blood that comes out of the elevators of the hotel, and of course, that final scene outside of the hotel, directly mirroring the finale in the Frozen Labyrinth. Really, this segment is perfect, and it has all the elements needed for a great parody, a great Treehouse segment, and a great Simpsons story all at once. It's no wonder why it's the most popular Treehouse of Horror segment ever made. But for me, 4 segments still manage to surpass it. Number 4, Homer, from the Treehouse of Horror 28. Homer is the first of 2 HD segments that managed to make this list, not counting the honorable mentions. And to me, it really stands out as not only an excellent surprise that you wouldn't see coming at all, but one of the most disturbing segments of all time in the best way possible, even though it still has a lot of funny moments, unlike Nightmare Cafeteria, which fully focused on the fear factor. In this segment, Homer is home alone for a couple of days, and at one point, he realizes he ate all the food in the house. When he's expecting him to go to the grocery store to have stuff to eat, he instead finds one last hot dog that he cooks on the grill. However, he mistakenly cuts off his own finger as Santa's little helper eats the hot dog.
I know this sounds very cursed to say it like that.
And it goes on the grill. Homer ends up eating the cooked finger and realizes it tastes delicious. From there, he starts getting addicted to eating his own meat.
Once again, I know this sounds sus.
And no longer enjoys regular food, as he gets used to an auto-cannibalistic lifestyle and starts to eat more and more of his body parts. So the reason this segment works is that it makes you feel all kinds of different things at once, all things that are part of what makes Treehouse of Horror amazing. The whole premise is obviously very disturbing, and the way the build-up kind of works like a downward spiral as Homer never quits his auto-cannibalistic lifestyle and just goes further and further, along with the gross-out factor of the segment in general, obviously makes it scary, even though it's a different kind of scary than a segment like Nightmare Cafeteria, with the setting being much more mundane, even though it sees Homer slowing destroying his body. However, it's also funny, because the whole segment treats it in a simultaneously chill and cynical way. The peak of the humor factor, though, is when Marge finally finds out after they come back, and as she's horrified, the segment turned into a Homer and Marge relationship crisis. The cynicism used in this part just makes it so funny, with the inconsequent aspect of the segment. And even though relationship crisis plots can often be quite annoying in these kinds of shows, this one works well, as it's not meant to be taken seriously, and it's short-lived enough too. But then, after Marge leaves Homer, he finds a way to win her back and be forgiven. And it's so absurd, yet surprising, that I'm gonna give you a spoiler warning. If you haven't watched this segment and you want to after this video, please go to the following timecode to go to number 3 and avoid any spoilers. So Mario Batali, a famous real-life Italian chef, comes to the cabinet where Homer is, and they both find an idea to win Marge back. Mario Batali literally cooks what's left of Homer and turns him into various dishes before serving him in various restaurants all across Springfield before showing the whole thing to the rest of the family.
Il m'a demandé de répéter ces derniers mots. J'ai échoué en tant qu'homme, mais j'ai réussi en tant qu'ingrédient.
This ending is so disturbing in the way Homer treated the whole thing with a light-hearted tone during his last days, but the way the Springfield citizens are all eating dishes out of Homer's dead body and loving them without even considering what they're made of is so absurd and hilarious, especially with how Carl is more shocked at how they mixed horse meat into Homer than at how he's been eating human meat. Homer.
It's always weird to say that segment's name.
It's just so disturbing, yet hilarious all the way through, and the duality works so well for the whole duration of the segment. It really embodies what makes these episodes so great in the first place, and it's a great surprise on my part. Number 3, Life is a Glitch Then You Die, from the Treehouse of Horror 10. Life's a Glitch Then You Die is a segment that had a very cool idea that instantly made it a very memorable concept. Unlike many Treehouse of Horror segments, this one is not a parody of a movie, a show, a Twilight Zone episode, nor a book, but instead, it parodies the mere concept of the year 2000 problem, or as it's commonly called, Y2K. For those unaware, in the 90s, people became increasingly concerned about a glitch in devices such as computers, since at the time, many of them only told the year with 2 numbers, such as 96 to refer to 1996. There was a possibility that many computers would glitch out by thinking we're in year 19,000 when we were actually in year 2000. To avoid this, many computers in the world were updated at that time. But this led to a lot of conspiracy theories, predicted that if the computers weren't going to be fixed, that would start an apocalypse. A surprising amount of people actually believed in this apocalypse BS, even though the consensus among experts is clearly that such an apocalypse due to Y2K could not go beyond the realm of science fiction. This segment is meant to be satire of this whole apocalyptic narrative. On December 31, 1999, the Simpsons and their friends are all excited to celebrate the New Year 2000. Homer is charged to reprogram computers to prevent Y2K. However, we then discover that he forgot to do it, as the glitched computers at the Springfield power plant end up interfering with all the other computers in the world, causing mass road accidents, falling airplanes, which was actually one of the more common ways to illustrate the Y2K apocalypse theory, malfunctioning waffle irons, and this. What makes this segment so great is that once again, the sheer amount of creative ideas and witty satire that's managed to pull out of the Y2K conspiracies doesn't have limits. There are all the different absurd ways that the electronic devices go awry, Especially, my favorite one, Krusty's pacemaker.
Il est bloqué sur oiseau-bouche. Du nectar, il me faut ma dose de nectar.
And then, the second part of the segment. The Simpsons managed to find an invitation to the Operation Exodus that allows the elite of humanity to go to a rocket that will build a giant civilization on Mars. However, Lisa's only allowed to bring one of her parents with her, and she chooses Marge. Thankfully, Homer and Bart find another rocket that's not guarded, so they enter it, along with several other celebrities that were presumably rejected from the other one. However, this rocket is actually going to the sun, and the segment ends with Homer and Bart being so fed up with the shit the celebrities are doing in the rockets that they decide to eject themselves into space to die immediately. So I already love the way they just satirize the mirror concept of the elite of the Earth going to Mars to rebuild civilization, while 99% of the world's population is just condemned to die on the Earth. But then, they made it even better by making the whole thing overly cynical and absurd in the best way possible.
Yes, because cynical in the best way possible does not mean so dark and cynical that you become modern Family Guy.
Yeah, exactly. In this case, it works because it serves as a satire with the whole absurdity of the situation, with all the celebrity being overly positive even though they are about to die in 5 minutes, and acting like they're gonna settle for a luxurious life on the sun. Really, the segment manages to pull off two different satires, yet make them as hilarious as they can be, through the whole absurdity of the situation, the creativity of the different jokes, and most importantly, an actual way to make you laugh with a side of "it's funny because it's true," which is what a satire should be. You hear that, the information rage? You hear that? Number 2, Toy Gory, from the Treehouse of Horror 31. Toy Gory is clearly the best segment from the HD seasons, and in a way, I don't recall many segments in the HD seasons, except for Homer, mixing horror and comedy so well like this segment does. This segment is obviously a parody of Toy Story, the first ever movie to have 3D animation. So to pay homage to this segment is almost entirely animated in 3D. And I gotta say, to start off, this is pretty well animated, especially for TV budgets on a show that's usually animated in 2D. But the story is pretty cool too. In this segment, Bart is the main character, but he's not an Andy, but a Sid. As such, he tortures and sometimes destroys all the toys he gets. This is such an obvious way to parody it, but it works so well, especially with the way everything is made to mirror Toy Story in a more cynical way, with the toys loving Andy and fearing the time he'll grow up and eventually lose interest in toys, compared to Bart's toys hating him and wanting to take revenge on him. The song Get the Start is a good mirror to the original movie. While the original one has an optimistic tone and talks about friendship while being played over Andy playing and having fun with Woody, this parody is much more cynical, and is pretty much just insulting Bart and referring to different ways he tortured his toys, over a montage of Bart finding creative ways to torture them. To actually start the story, Bart gets a radioactive man figurine, who is kind of a parody of Buzz Lightyear, being the new toy who's very naive and clueless about how everything works here, as he's completely oblivious to what Bart is doing. He dies very fast, as Bart puts him in the microwave and immediately makes him explode, as he was supposed to have actual radioactivity. After doing a funeral service for him, the other toys finally decide that this is the last straw. They agree to take revenge on their torturer. And wait, Bart literally has a gift that he never unwrapped?
Damn, how the fuck does he manage to still have so many toys that he forgets to unwrap a gift on his birthday when he still keeps destroying them?
But then, the second part escalates things by giving a subversion that could have been done poorly, but manages to actually be unsettling. Once again, I invite you to go to the following time code if you want to go to this part spoiler-free, because I think it's worth it. So the toys actually kidnap Bart while he's asleep to tie him up in his treehouse, which is already a level up from Toy Story, where Woody and all the other toys just follow Sid's plans to destroy Buzz Lightyear and plan their whole acting to scare him according to this. Bart tries to argue with the toys, but to no avail, as they keep retaining him. And then this happens. One of the toys, Maggie Boo Stacy, uses sort of knights to do what I can only describe as lobotomy. This transforms bots into an actual toy. Not a toy with consciousness like them, just a simple, unresponsive figurine that can only say some pre recorded sentences. This is already a very unsettling idea, as the whole build up to this climax is already done really well, with a good minute dedicated to the family slowly but surely discovering it. Even the cynical tone of the ending, with the other song and Dr. Hibbert being very chill about it, as usual, is oddly creepy too, with the segment actually ending with the family realizing they lost Bart when this happens.
Je suis Bart Simpson. J'aime mon père et ma mère.
Oh, on l'a perdu.
And while the jokes are also really funny in this part, their cynical tone contributes to the fear factor as well due to this. This makes a really good mix of horror and comedy, with a way that's similar yet different to how Homer did it. The whole segment ends with a song, which works really well as a parody, with a Toy Story-like melody being accompanied with dark lyrics, and the way the tables turn with the toys now torturing Bart's corpse. Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it. Overall, Toy Gory manages to be a really funny segment, with a lot of good jokes like this one too.
Je vous aurais jamais maltraité si j'avais su que vous aviez des sentiments.
Tu me maltraites et tu sais que j'ai des sentiments.
It also manages to have a really unsettling second half, with the very creepy implications of what happened, the cynical tone making it oddly disturbing, and the way the family reacts in surprisingly serious fashion to Bart's death. Overall, Toy Gory has everything needed to make a good segment, and it was really close to being number one. It's just that there was one segment that managed to be even better. But before that, let's go through the usual honorable mentions. This ranking was much harder to do than the previous one, because obviously there are a lot more great Treehouse of Horror stories than terrible ones. I even considered making a top 15 list instead, just like I did with SpongeBob SquarePants last year. But ultimately, I decided to dedicate this part to some segments that didn't make the list but that I still wanted to mention briefly. First, we have the Devil and Homer Simpsons in the fourth Treehouse of Horror. I was kinda sad to not mention this episode because even though none of its segments made the list, all of them are still top notch and could have made the list easily if it was a top 20 list or a top 15 list. So I wanted to mention this segment, which is my favorite of them. Homer craves donuts, but he can't find one in the power plant right now, so he says to himself that he would be willing to sell his soul to get one. Ned, who is literally the devil in the segment, appears and suggests a contract that allows him to get a donut, but when Homer finishes it, his soul will belong to the devil. However, Homer doesn't realize the dangers of this idea, and will quickly end up regretting it. This is a really good segment with a very fun subversion of hell, with weird torture machines and even Homer's reaction to them, like how he's enjoying the overfeeding machine. And Ned as the devil is also such an iconic and funny role, seeing as he's usually the kind and compassionate devout Christian of the main cast. The next segment I want to talk about is Time and Punishment in Treehouse of Horror 5. After making his toaster malfunction, Homer gets sent back in time by said toaster and can therefore use it to practice time travel now. He accidentally kills a fly in the prehistoric times, and from there, he changes the present in the most absurd way possible. So he has to try to go back in time where he killed the fly to fix what he did, except staying for so long without touching something else is easier said than done, which leads to him exploring all kinds of different multiversals and futures. This one works due to, once again, the sheer creativity of the different multiverses. You have a present where Ned Flanders is a dictator who punishes any form of dissent in Springfield. But you also have one where Homer is rich with Patty and Selma being dead, but where nobody knows what a donut is, which leads to Homer to meet the best part. In this world, rain is made of donuts. Overall, both the time travel phases and the multiverse phases are very creative and make for a segment packed with funny jokes and entertaining adventures. The Island of Dr. Hibbert from Treehouse of Horror 13 is next on our list. So this one is a segment about transformation, like I've drawn a costume on your face. I wanted to only include one of them so they wouldn't cash in the list, but I even hesitated on which one would represent the creativity used in the concept of transformations by the Simpsons the best. This segment is honestly really creative, with Dr. Hibbert turning people into animals and each Simpsons character's transformation representing their personality, like Bart being a spider because he is mischievous, or Apu being an opossum because he has a lot of children. But ultimately, I've grown a costume on your face managed to take the cake, thanks to the more creative aspects of the transformations that came from them being more various things than just animals. However, I still wanted to give some representation to the island of Dr. Hibbert in this video. Finally, we have War and Pieces in the Treehouse of Horror 21. In this segment, Bart and Milhouse find a game called Satan's Path in the Attic. They play it, and it turns the whole city of Springfield into a giant game board. This one is a parody of Jumanji, and I think it was a really clever twist to have the whole city become part of the game instead of just the house, because this allows for so many funny and creative jokes. Each character fits their small gag, and the whole adventure Bart and Milhouse go through to make everything go back to normal is also fun and engaging. So with those segments out of the way, let's go to number 1. Number 1, Homer Cubed from Treehouse of Horror 6. Homer Cubed is just freaking amazing. It's not as horrific as a segment like Toy Gory, The Shinning, or Nightmare Cafeteria, but it fully makes up for its uniqueness, its perfect humor, and fascinating aspect of the story and visuals. In this segment, Homer can't find a place to hide from Patty and Selma, and he tries to hide behind the shelf. Suddenly, he discovers his elbow can go through the wall. When Selma goes near the shelf to find a screwdriver, Homer is frightened and decides to try and go through this wall for good. He steps into a dimension where everything, including people who enter it, is in 3 dimensions. At first, I gotta say, the 3D animation is surprisingly good looking and didn't age as badly as you'd think, especially since this segment was made in 1995, before Toy Story, the first long-form movie to be made in CGI, was even released. So already, that's a really impressive thing to make the animation look so good even though the segments came out so early, especially with a TV budget with 2 cool progressive transformations from 2D to 3D. But the rest of the segment is just as good. As Homer is exploring this new dimension, you really feel a true homage to all these works of art from the prehistory of 3D. It's a parody of the Twilight Zone episode Little Girl Lost, but the great look of the ground in the 3D dimension is inspired from the movie Tron, which Homer references in this episode.
Ça a l'air de... Y a quelqu'un qui a vu le film Tron?
Non.
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 Non. Non.
Non.
Non.
Non.
Non.
Non. Oui. Enfin, non.
But there are also several elements from the video game Myst, which came out 2 years before this episode, and this allows the segment to have a fascinating aspect that no other segments managed to achieve to this day. The music is honestly top-notch in this segment, constantly having this alien-like tone that almost makes it feel like Homer has landed on an uncharted planet. And when Homer goes near that ancient building, the music even switches to a more majestic set of instruments and melody that both fits the place Homer is going near and the atmosphere of this other world in general. And then, when Homer mistakenly pierces the ground of the dimension and makes it progressively collapse, they manage to keep this otherworldly atmosphere while giving a sense of urgency to the music. I also love how this segment makes the absolute best of all the things 3D allows and that 2D doesn't allow without it looking cuss. Like Homer gently slapping on his belly to see that it has a liquid-like texture, his head stretching when he approaches the hole that the cone made, or even him disintegrating when he ends up falling in it. It really feels like since this is a 2D show, Homer has stepped on an unknown planet and is exploring all of its strange properties. The humor is also great. there is constantly another funny joke at the corner. I think this may be some of the funniest 7 minutes in the whole series, with amazing jokes like the TRON one I mentioned before, but also these.
Bah, on a eu un petit pépin quand l'univers s'est affaissé sur lui-même, mais papa a l'air plutôt optimiste.
Homer Simpson a été aspiré dans la 3e dimension.
Excusez-moi.
And I also love how any notion of 3D is basically futuristic knowledge that only a scientist like Frank would know about in the story, seeing how shocked the characters are when they learn what a cube is.
Insert unfunny and unfairly generalizing general for joke here.
And the ending also works well. Bart tries to save Homer, but he falls in the hole and disintegrates, before being teleported to the real world. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first instance of live action in the whole show. He walks through the street, discovering our terrifying world before finding a shop of erotic cakes. He enters, ending the segment and the episode. Homer Cube is literally the perfect segment, in spite of its lack of horror. It has a lot of amazing jokes that just keep on giving one after the other. Then, the segment has a fascinating, otherworldly atmosphere that works wonderfully and that manages to give a sense of discovery but also of urgency in a great way by acting like 3D is a whole new world for the characters. It recaptured how science fiction related Treehouse of Horror works, with their fascinating stories and atmosphere. This is easily the best Treehouse of Horror segment ever made, and it's going to be very hard to top it. This video is now over. I hope it made you more curious to discover more Treehouse of Horror episodes from The Simpsons. These episodes are often among the most creative, funny, fascinating, and surprising ones of the show, and even after 37 seasons, they're still often the episodes that excite me the most. And I hope that they will continue to bring creative and surprising stories for decades to come. Also, since this is the first video of 2026, Happy New Year! I hope this year will be better than the previous one. It shouldn't be that hard anyway, god 2025 sucks. Feel free to give me your own top list of your own favorite Treehouse of Horror segments, I'll be happy to read it. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Bye bye!